What's up, guys? We're back sooner than expected. Just finished watching my last video on Daredevils and Strongmen. I gotta say, the theory side of the last video was a little bit hard to follow. I found myself losing track of what I was saying as I was watching it, which is a really bad sign, obviously. So I just wanted to jump right in and immediately make a second Daredevil video, in part because I always intended to. I didn't get through everything I wanted to in the first 20 minutes of talking about Daredevils, but I also want to take this opportunity to, as quickly as possible, get something out there to kind of clarify some of the things that I was trying to say and really failed to say clearly in the last video. I don't think it's hard to understand what drives stuntmen and strongmen and powerlifters to risk their bodies in exchange for fame. I think we all have this drive to be seen, and it operates everywhere in culture, not just in these extreme kind of sports or extreme stunt performances. Everywhere you look in modern Western culture, we venerate fame and we condemn anonymity. No one wants to be unknown. Everyone wants to be recognized. You see this most, I think, in social media. In online communities like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, you really see average anonymous people fashioning themselves into kind of celebrities in waiting. These places, these communities, they're bush leagues for professional celebrity environments. These websites really encourage their users to become spectacles, to become presentations of themselves, and the kind of narrative, whether or not this is true, I have no idea, but the narrative is that these environments, especially YouTube, are trolled by producers of real media, like Hollywood producers, television producers, to look for, upcoming talent. So a lot of people are kind of imagining that they're auditioning with their YouTube videos or with their Facebook profiles. We undergo a kind of training through social media, a kind of amateur celebrity training, which exists outside of the internet, obviously. I think that self-presentation, as I've mentioned in earlier videos, is a very common way to manufacture ourselves and to kind of firm up and reinforce our identity. But on social media, presentation is the method of self-manufacturing. All we do is show ourselves to people. And this showing, these environments of self-presentation, they really train us above all in objectification. We turn other people into objects. We render them less than people. We make them kind of superficial, toy-like, but we do the same thing to ourselves. We're trained in self-objectification as we engage in social media. Everything you do on social media is a form of self-objectification. You're limiting your identity to a post on Instagram or a tweet or a Facebook, whatever they call them now, message, I don't know. Social media creates a self, which is a product for sale. And this is also what daredevils do, right? Daredevils and stuntmen and strongmen and powerlifters, all of these people objectify themselves. They stop being a person and start being, in the case of a powerlifter, a set of musculature, skeletal structures that move weight. And really, they're defined by the amount of weight they can move. This is a supreme form of objectification. And you see it in stuntmen as well. They become a rag doll. They become a mannequin. They become a punching bag. So speaking of commoditization and self-objectification, there's this common phrase that's been floating around criticism of social media for a pretty long time. The earliest source I could find for it was Adam McLean, and the phrase is, "You are the product." Now, usually what this is taken to mean is that your attention, your status as a potential client or customer, your ability to absorb ads, that's the product. On social media, users are sold as advertising consumers or an advertising audience. Now, it's a shame that this is the common interpretation of such a poetically salient phrase. I think that we can adopt it for our own uses. You are the product, not your attention, not your ability to be sold something, not the fact that you'll watch ads that happen to be on the site that you're using. You yourself are the product. Social media converts people into products. Social media runs us through a filter. It selects for what is marketable, what will fit on, a limited character tweet, or what will fit within the resolution of an Instagram picture. It selects for that which will grab the most attention. Right? That's the goal of social media, is to attract attention and to generate intrigue. So it encourages its users to create themselves as pithy, frameable, intelligible entities. This is the same thing that daredevils and powerlifters are doing. They're simplifying themselves into a presentation, and the necessities of mass presentation are that it is intelligible, digestible, consumable, quickly absorbable. The result of this simplification is an obliteration of the self. Like I said in the last video, visibility, the need to be seen, the need for fame, is suicidal. We vanish as we become massively visible. These overly simplified presentations separate us from the complexity of ourselves. We are this messy, slippery, ill-defined entity, and we kind of slop around our lives like a slug or something. That's not how we operate on social media. We're crisp on social media. Our boundaries are well-defined. We know what we are, and our audience knows what we are, because we tell them what we are in the simplest terms possible. It's suicidal. Just like stunt performances, just like extreme powerlifting, social media obliterates the self. So outside of presentation in the celebrity world, presentation in the day-to-day world is equally selective. Like I said, we're this messy pile of secrets, and no one can really know anyone else. So any process of knowing someone is necessarily a process of selection, of limiting, of paring down the other until we can understand them and kind of get our arms around them. This is also sometimes referred to as a process of cleaning, which brings us to my new favorite subject, dirt theory. I just discovered that dirt theory was a thing, and to be honest, if I had known about it back when I was in school, I might still be in school studying dirt theory. Dirt theory. How is that a thing? So they say that dirt is matter out of place, which really makes dirt theory, or a study of dirt, the study of belonging, right? By defining something as being out of place, you're inherently saying that somewhere else it would be in place. You're trying to define where things belong, where they fit, when you're trying to define whether or not they're dirty. And if you think about like the practical daily process of cleaning, this is also true. When you're moving through your house, cleaning it up, everything you're doing is putting something where it belongs, right? There's dirt on the floor, it belongs in the garbage. There's a book on the coffee table, it belongs on the bookshelf. So inherently, when you're seeing some things as dirty, you're seeing other things as clean. Dirt isn't about what is or isn't inherently dirty. Dirt is about context. In determining whether or not one thing is out of place, we're inherently deciding whether or not something else is in place. I guess what I mean is, built into dirt theory is a cleanliness theory, a theory of the clean, which of course quickly becomes moralistic, right? It starts to become about purity. It starts to become about sacredness and profanity. You're categorizing things when you're thinking about dirt in this way. To bring it back to personalities and self-making, some parts of us are clean, some parts of us are understandable. They belong in a self-presentation. Other parts of us are dirty. Other parts of us are unintelligible. They belong outside of a self-presentation. So the fact that a power lifter happens to have an eating disorder and had a messy divorce last year and has a shitty relationship with his kids, but really loves them, but can't quite talk to them, and they don't really get what he's doing, and he has to work out 12 hours a day, and this puts a lot of emotional pressure on him on top of all the weight pressure that he puts on himself. That's a messy story, and that has nothing to do with powerlifting. So as a result, the presentation of the powerlifter edits that out. That's the dirty part of himself, and it doesn't make it onto the stage. But that separation is killing him, right? You can't separate yourself like that. You have some parts of yourself that are understandable and some parts that aren't, but they're both you. So when the power lifter loosens himself up and breaks himself apart like that, he's killing himself. It's suicidal. Of course, a theory of dirt could be something else entirely. Maybe the theory of dirt isn't about determining what's clean and dirty and categorizing things. Maybe the theory of dirt is a method, not a diagnostic kind of process. Maybe it's a means by which we can make things dirty. Maybe what the world needs, instead of these neat divisions between intelligibility and unintelligibility, is a contamination. This would be a practice rather than a theory. Like I said, it would be a method. And a principal way to understand this method is the fan man. The fan man circumvented normal paths to fame. He is matter out of place. We normally elevate celebrities through predetermined industrial processes like the music industry or Hollywood or television. All of these things are controlled by companies. They're well understood. They're predictable. The fan man was none of those things. He's a messy, unknowable person who just crash landed into a mass spectacle. He disrupted the traditional division between the unintelligible masses and the intelligible spectacle. He is the unintelligible spectacle. He's contaminated. He's dirty. The fan man is organic. He's whole. Celebrities, traditional mass-produced celebrities, not outsider celebrities like the fan man or social media personalities or strongmen, like I'm talking about celebrities like Hollywood celebrities, television stars, big musicians. These personalities are selected by a corporate process. They're filtered and loosened up. I keep saying loosened up because I believe this process of celebritization is a process of analysis. And analysis comes from the Greek analuin, which means to loosen up, to break apart. Analysis is a process of destruction. It's not a creative process. You look at a whole thing and then you smash it into bits, and that's how you understand it. So celebrities are analyzed. They are broken up and understood. Their marketable traits are censored out from their unmarketable, unintelligible traits, and they're selected for and they're molded together into this new hyper-intelligible personality. Again, the fan man was none of those things. So that was a lot of talking, but get ready for a turn because I'm about to unsay a lot of the stuff that I just said. We have to watch out for an old platonic pothole that I probably just fell into. The immediate over the reproduced, the immediate over the absent, the original over the repetition. These are the values that I was just espousing. We have a messy, unknowable, original, present, authentic self, and then we have a less authentic imitation of that self, which is selected celebrity traits that are intelligible. I'm associating intelligibility with inauthenticity and unintelligibility and chaos with authenticity. That's a mistake. We don't want to assume that social media and the very old tradition of self-presentation that it leads to be a way to get away from authenticity. We should remember that at our core is a void. There is no authentic self to lose touch with. Any presentation of the self will eventually become an authentic version of ourself. So let's entertain two seemingly contradictory notions at once. We could say that celebrity culture is a limiting, like we've been saying, that it shrinks down the self, it obliterates the totality of the self, and breaks us down into these parts, these objective, toy-like object parts. And we can say that celebrity culture is an opening of the self, and it's a broadening of humanity, and it's an increasing of our vitality and our visibility, and it's an affirmation of our existence as opposed to a diminishing of it. I think that both of these things are happening in celebrity culture, in social media, in Daredevil performances, in strongmen competitions. All of these presentations of the self are creating an authentic version of ourselves by destroying an original version. By breaking us apart, we're making ourselves more vital, more intelligible, more human. But how can a piece be a whole? How can we break ourselves up into individual parts and then say that each of those parts is a whole version of us? It seems counterintuitive that we would carve ourselves up like a body and then say that the arm is a whole version of ourselves. But metaphors are failing us here. Personalities, identities, they're not carcasses. If we have to use a biological metaphor, we might be better served by talking about ourselves like a plant, like a clonally producing plant, like a spider plant. See, the amazing thing about a spider plant is you've got the whole plant, right? Like, see, you got the pot, you got the whole plant, it's a whole plant. And then you go in, and what do you have there? You've got another little plant. But that's just a piece of the plant. How can you have a piece of a plant that's also a whole plant? Well, it's because the spider plant looks like one unified organism. But it's not. It's a series of fractal images of the same organism. And if you were to separate them from each other, the smaller separated part would quickly turn into a copy of the original. I think this is a more appropriate metaphor for selfhood than a single unified body. Our selves are fractal. They have pieces that don't necessarily tie into each other and aren't necessarily reliant on each other. We can be broken up. We can be separated. I could die and these videos would stay on the internet. It would still be a version of me that is visible to the masses. It would still be a presentation of the self, but would it be me? I don't know. When you plant a spiderling off a spider plant and it grows into another version, is that the same thing? I don't know. I think these are the questions that social media and celebrity self-presentation force us to ask ourselves about self-manufacturing and the nature of the self. I've been saying copy, but that's probably not the right word. I think language is failing us here. You haven't copied anything with the spider plant or with self-presentation over the internet. There is no original. There is no authentic. This is just a proliferation. Copy was a part of the singular original, but it also was the singular original. The singular original concept, the plant, the spider plant, is a unified system made up of discrete unconnected parts. It's a contradiction, but I think that's the closest we're going to get to an understanding of the self. We're going to cut that out. There's no understanding of the self in the modern world. So let's get back to daredevils and powerlifters. When they present their bodies as their self, it's not a limiting of the self. It's an authentic presentation of the self, and it's the only presentation that any of us have access to in the modern world. We're all powerlifters. We're all stuntmen. We're all daredevils. We're all sacrificing our bodies in order to be seen. We're sacrificing ourselves in order to be seen. There is no nuanced inner world that has to be expressed but can't be expressed. This is an antiquated notion of selfhood, that there is an authentic self, that there's a singular self. We're fractal, broken up images of the self. Like a shattered mirror. I don't know. I'm not very good with metaphors. What I mean is that there is no inner world that is inexpressible. The inner world is inexpressible, but the inner world is a void. There's nothing inside of us. We are only the shells. We are only the presentations that we give to other people. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say about daredevils the first time. This video should clear that up. I'll get it up on the YouTubes as quickly as I can. Sorry for the confusion in the first video. I just lost track of what I was saying, I guess. Anyway, this has been The Theory Creep. I'm The Theory Creep, and we'll see you next time.